This video has been a long time coming, and it is the continuation of my rookie tutorials about competitive armies and nations, and this one is about the Finnish, one of the most sought after nations for me to do, actually. So let's go and see what I have to say. So this is just the basics. I'm not going to teach you in detail how to run a Finnish army because I don't really. I have played a few games using Finnish. Their playstyle is not for me. So in that respect, I sort of I know a lot of people who do play Finnish and they're very, very good. Now, the competitive advantages of the Finnish army are their specialist infantry. They have the best, in certain respects, the best specialist infantry of the game. And most of it is veteran. And if it's not veteran, then it can become veteran because they have that national special rule where they can be upgraded to being veteran or even super veterans, having 11 morale, not just 10. So they have very, very strong veteran specialist infantry. They don't really have access to a lot of just regular type of infantry, and at least it's not something that you can buy regulars in the Finnish army, but it's not something that you typically see done where you have large groups of veterans, because the veteran large group of regulars, because the veteran specialists are just so much better. There is that automatic infantry upgrade in their national special rules, which is really nice, but it does create a problem because the infantry gets upgraded once you lose half your unit, which means that almost always you will see Finnish players who are good at what they do have even numbers in their units, because that will mean that they don't need to lose one extra guy before they get upgraded. So you will see Finnish units being 6, 8, or 10-man units. That is it. You're never seeing a 7-man unit. Doesn't happen, because it would be dumb, because that 7-man unit would need to lose 4 men before they get upgraded to veteran or super veteran. They do have access to Panzerfausts as well, which is a competitive advantage, but I'll get back to what that does, because it does limit you. It's only some units that you get the Panzerfaust for. And then they have that amazing +1 to hit when they're in ambush, which really encourages you to put your army on ambush, to have a lot of infantry that can benefit from that and put them on ambush as much of the time as you want, which can lead to a little bit of a static army, where you don't move that much. But it is still a huge advantage because it will mean that you're much better at hitting the enemy than what you normally see. So those were the advantages. The disadvantages, I've already mentioned some of them. They are pretty limited in their selection of units outside of infantry. For infantry, they are possibly they are the best minor nation. They have the best selection of infantry. They have the widest selection of infantry of any minor nation, and they really have some good units. But if you look outside that, then they're not that good. They're not great. Especially maybe the tank selections are very limited. They have to have, most of them have to be uh, um, tanks that they've conquered from the Soviets, which means that they're unreliable, which is not great. And they sort of lack mobility as well. They don't have many trucks, access to that kind of mobility stuff, and they don't have cavalry. They don't really have access to a lot of pioneers, which you would normally use in trucks. So they're not a mobile force as such. They're an infantry-based force, and as such, they're very good at that. But that does limit what you can build with the army. You can build mixed bag army lists, which is what you normally see. You'll see an army list of Finns that has all the good infantry selections. It has a lot of the small teams. It has it has mortars, it howitzers, it may have a single tank. There are some of the tanks which can be okay, but that's it. You'll see mixed bag, or you will see all skirmish armies where everything is just designed to move up into the center of the board and just wave back and forth in front of the enemy, delivering shots all the time, with a few pins, with a few casualties. And those are the army builds. That's it. Um, you can build other army builds with the Finns, but I would not recommend them, and I don't see them competitively at all. So it is a very limited selection of army builds you have. You can basically almost be sure of what any Finnish army, if a player is saying, I'm bringing Finns to this tournament, you know already what they're going to bring. The standout units for me is at the very top of the list. The best skirmish unit of the game are the sissies. The sissies are they're an ethnic group in Finland that, and they were reputed to be very good hunters. So the sissies in themselves have one special rule that makes them stand out. They're veterans, they're skirmish infantry, they have got rifles, and I would never buy any upgrades. There no SMGs, no nothing else. Just regular sissies with the rifles, please. 6-man units, maybe 8. Veteran. What their special rule is, and what makes them so amazing, is that they can advance and then flip the dice going on ambush. So instead of having -1 for having moved, they're suddenly at +1 because they're on ambush. That is an amazing ability. That really makes them better skirmishers than the Americans, better skirmishers than cavalry units. They are just so very, very good. The one thing that really drags them down, and why you will typically see most Finnish players not bringing all sissy infantry, is because they lack Panzerfausts. And that brings me to number 2 unit that stands out, the Continuation War Veterans or Regulars. You can buy these as veteran or regulars, but I would take them as regulars, normally, because you want to save points for all your expensive veteran sissies. So what you do is, and the attraction of the Continuation War regulars is that they can take a Panzerfaust. So what I would do is I would take 6-man units, single Panzerfaust or rifles. They are support units pushing behind the sissy line, moving up behind that. If anything threatening shoots at them, they go down. Otherwise, they can be on ambush, they can support the sissies, and they are there with that Panzerfaust to threaten away those darker Stuarts that inevitably come at you. So those 2 units, the sissies and the Continuation War regulars, those are the standout units. But then there are 4 other units that I would just mention. There is the Calcapachos, which are, I think, the most expensive infantry unit of the game. They are extremely expensive. They're 140 points for 5 men or something like that. It's insane. They are fanatics. They've got anti-tank grenades, I think. They've got rifles and SMGs built into the unit itself, so they're extremely deadly. And they have a very, very cool special rule, which is that they can come on from outflank on the opposing player's board edge. So not just the flanks, from his back line, which means that they are in more or less an automatic kill of enemy artillery positions. They can move in and just obliterate an artillery position. The problem with Calcapachos is they're extremely expensive. And what happens once they've killed that artillery piece is that they will typically get shot to pieces because everything else in the enemy's army will focus on them and just shoot them down. So quite often Calcapachos are not worth it. One further problem with them is that they take up an infantry selection, and you only have like so many infantry selections, and you want your sissies and you want your Continuation War rifles. For me, the Calcapachos will typically be left out unless I'm feeling like this could be just fun and giggles. I don't think they're typically worth it. What you will never see any Finnish army leave home without, and what you should never leave without, is a sniper. And basically, if you can, um, if your tournament pack allows it, take double platoons for Finns. 2 platoons, a sniper, uh, and 4 sissy units, and whatever continuation war rifles you can take after that. That would be the basis of an awesome build for your Finns. So double snipers, 4 times sissies, really good. Because the snipers benefit from that +1 from ambush as well, so just put them on ambush. If you're going to look at tanks, I would look at the T-28. It has a light howitzer and 4 MMGs, so it may be still unreliable, which sucks, and you're going to have to run your lieutenant right behind it to get it out of trouble. But a light howitzer and 4 MMGs, that's pretty good. And you can also look at the Komsomolets, the T-20s. Those are transport vehicles, and they can transport, I think it's 6 or 8 men. I think it's 6. So an even number, which is cool, which fits with our what we want for the Finns. The problem with the Komsomolets is, again, they're unreliable and they're open topped, so they will get pinned. They will get a lot of pins. But they are armored, they have a single LMG, and even though the model clearly shows that the guys being transported out in the open, they are actually extremely vulnerable to rifle fire. In the game terms, they are impervious. You can't shoot them because they're in a vehicle. So take advantage of that as long as there's no like sitting on top of the tank, which is actually what they're doing. They're sitting on top of the tank or the Komsomolet. Right, so those are the standout units for me. As you can see, the Finnish, their national special rules, the standout units all are focused on infantry. So that is what you build. Now, I've made this little extra slide. This is not a normal slide for my competitive nations go through. But there are certain tactics that work really well with the Finnish. I've already mentioned the advanced plus ambush of the sissies. They're the only unit in the game that can do it, and it's just an amazing ability. Really, really good. It increases your likelihood of hitting, it increases the mobility of ambush skirmishers. So it's a really, really good ability. You should make use of that as often as possible. What you're then going to have to figure out is whether or not to retain that ambush at the end of the turn. What it will do is it will discourage enemy infantry from moving into your line of fire, of course. But if they're not moving, then you should maybe remove it at the end so that you can do it again next turn. So there's a little bit of learning how to use ambush really well when you're playing Finnish. You should also be training yourself to hug terrain. Your unit should always be behind some kind of terrain. Especially beneficial is of course linear obstacles, because linear obstacles you can stand right up against those and shoot across them without giving the enemy cover. It's a little bit more tricky when you're in area terrain, because in area terrain you're going to have to touch the edge, which means that the enemy can charge you, which is not good. But you're going to have to touch that edge if you want to avoid giving cover to the enemy. Sometimes that doesn't matter, but I like my linear obstacles when I'm looking at Finnish and playing Finnish. You should also be playing around with your snipers on ambush, which means that you should activate your snipers quite early in the turn, putting them on ambush instead of just shooting at stuff. They should be on ambush most of the time. Most people do this anyway if they're good with snipers, but they're even better with Finns because you get that +1 to hit. So you're not just hitting on 3s, you're hitting on 2s. Snipers, Finnish snipers are amazing. You should also train yourself into using covering fire. So what I see done is I'll see Finnish infantry come in 2s. 1 continuation war, 1 sissy. The sissy will move up and go on ambush. And because they are on ambush, that frees up the continuation wall unit to move up and shoot directly, or to run, or to whatever. Um, because the ambush sissies are already pinning down the enemy, or creating a bubble of threat. That covering fire, that move and fire tactics is really, really good. And you should make full use of that, and you should train yourself into using that well. Finally, there's I've already mentioned the backline surprise, which you can do with Calcapachos, where you come on behind the enemy line. However, it's quite often not a surprise because the enemies typically know this, and you should always, if you're bringing Calcapachos, make sure that the enemy have been told about their special ability, because it can really suck if the enemy doesn't know that. So that's it. That is my competitive Finns. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Cheers.